Hello, everyone. I'm Zane Smith, the co-host of the podcast Chunk and Run, and today we're going to have a bonus interview. This will be episode 18, and this is with Will Williams. Will Williams is a dear friend of mine. We go back to Southeastern, both played golf for the university, Southeastern University in Lakeland, Florida. Will went on to play golf at Rochester College, as well as Ave Maria University. He's a really, really good golfer, really good friend. He also coaches golf. He coaches at the PGA Superstore as well as fitting for the PGA Superstore in Orlando. Will also is a part of the band OakLee, based out of Central Florida. He is the guitarist for them. Great, great band, award-winning band. They've played at the Strawberry Festival a number of times. They've also played up in Tennessee in Gatlinburg, as well as down in Florida at Old Red in Orlando. They've played Hard Rock as well. They've played a bunch of different venues, and they are a great band. Go check them out at OakLee Music on Instagram. Also check out their music on iTunes, if you could. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Will Williams. Hey, Will, how's it going? I know we had some audio issues, but I hope that I hope that I cut it out nicely. So.
Yeah, we that was one of the things that attracted me to this band and this group of guys is nobody was afraid to dream big. And, when I got in this band, there was already original music going, and I was getting into a very, working band type scenario. And I was really excited to just get into a situation that, there were no limits. It was just go play. Creativity is always on the table, and everybody was pretty hungry when I got in the band, and that's still the case.
Gotcha.
And we've been fortunate to play places like the Hard Rock Cafe and at the Strawberry Festival and the Dallas Bowl, and we've got some other great venues coming up in 2022, and gotten to play for some of our favorite artists in the opening slot. And it's just a really good collective working band. It has ups and downs, but the good far outweighs the bad, man. So we've had one single out for all of 2021. It came out in April. It's called "It's Me and You." That's on all platforms: Apple Music, Spotify, wherever you get your music. We were kind of waiting to see how things played out with the COVID situation before we got any more material ready to go. 2022 is going to be a busy year for us. We got a lot of live shows, and we have more finished recorded songs that's, they're done and they're ready to go. They're already done and cooked up in the oven for everybody. So we're just kind of waiting to see what the timing is going to be like, and, how the year kind of comes to a close here. But we do have more material, and it will be coming out for everybody. So for everyone, we've been getting a lot of good response at our shows, and everybody wants to hear more music. And the band is really starting to garner a nice tight little following, and so we want to make those people happy who support us and give them some new music here.
Yeah. So let's go ahead into more of the golf specific questions, because I have a lot of juniors that really, really want to do something with their golfing career. They want to play in college and so on and so forth. Growing up, we played Southeastern University. It's very competitive down there in South Florida. Southeastern University, they were national. They went to nationals the year before that we were there, and a lot of that team was still present at the time when we were in freshman year. What is there anything in your golfing career whenever you were growing up? Is there anything that you would do differently? Is there anything that you would tell young Will Williams to do? Any kind of advice you would give him?
Oh man, that's a good question. Going back, I kind of realized that you can never start that process too early. Collegiate golf. Being a former college coach myself, that is the entirety of the recruiting process. There's really no support staff that goes along with the coach or the assistant coach. It's just basically the one coach or both the coaches, and it you can never start too early in that regard. So as soon as you kind of get into high school, even before high school, start sending emails, start kind of making your name get across some of the desks of the coaches, and just plant seeds as early and often as you can, and eventually down the line, those will, brick by brick, that'll get you a little bit closer to your goals. As far as myself, well, when we were playing at Southeastern, I mean, I think people kind of look negatively on, anything that's a non-Division I school. But when we were playing at Southeastern, I mean, to go contend in these events, I mean, you still had to shoot well under par as a team and as an individual to have a chance at winning those things. So, I don't think golf really cares who you are or what your school is or what size it is. It's just as hard for everybody, but it's needless to say. I mean, you have to go out and shoot really good numbers, whether you're at a big school or a small school, to be in the conversation.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But as far as what I tell myself, I mean, I think when I was, I guess if I have to go back, if we're doing that, I probably would have just listened to myself a little more than anything. I don't think nobody knows you as well as you do. And, I think I had a lot of people who had a, good interest in my career and in my life at that point. But I think it ultimately boils down to the athlete and what you felt, what you feel led to do, where you feel led to be. And, I would just say go back and listen to myself a little more. There was a lot of cooks in the kitchen, if you will, when it came to, everybody had an opinion of what I should have done and where I should have gone. But I would have just listened to myself, and I would encourage any young person to do that. Aside from the usual things of keep working on your game, keep your grades as strong as possible, keep your character intact as much as possible. Life throws things at you, but coaches get that. But be as solid as a person as you can be into those years of high school, and things will probably turn out pretty good for you.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I have a lot of students that actually have a problem with attitude. Not a lot of students. I have some students that have a problem with attitude, and one of the things that I always tell them is, coaches all the time, they look at attitude. That's one of the biggest things. I remember we had Dan DeLuca on from Murray State University. He was talking to this, when I asked him, what's one of the things that you look for? He said he looks for an athlete that not only can play golf, but, has, other qualities, other behavioral qualities, stuff where it helps them keep their cool. They can keep their cool. They can keep their nose to the grindstone and not get super frustrated, not get super emotional. As a college coach, because you coach college, what do you look at? Like how do you look at helping those players with their attitude? How is it important? To what degree is it important? And how would you go about changing your attitudes? Because I know Coach Phelps, the only reason he let me on the team was because he sat me in his office. He said, "Hey man, I watched you play in the walk-on tournament. I really liked your attitude." Can you speak a little to that?
Yeah, to answer the first part of your question, I was always, you know me as well as anybody, especially on the golf course, and I've always kind of had that kind of laid back, kind of chilled out vibe to myself, and I never really got too angry or too high or too low. Sure, there was moments where golf is going to disappoint us all at some points, but by and large, I was always kind of just on that reserved, laid back, and just go play kind of mentality. As far as other people, I guess what I learned is I didn't perform well when I was angry. So that's why I never really went there. If I was running hot because I wasn't playing good or I had a bad stretch of holes, me getting, worked up didn't really help me play better. Now, some people can channel that and turn that into something that, kicks them in the butt and gets them going and gets them in gear. But to answer the second part of your question, there's attitude, I think is one of the things that you can control on the golf course.
Absolutely.
And it's very hard to control that because there's so many things to keep track of as a competitive player. But attitude and effort are the two things you always have the most control over. And if you can kind of get a handle on them, you'll be okay.
Yeah, so that's a lot of my students need that advice. They need that advice about how to how to handle themselves on the golf course. So I was reading this from the other day, this column, this article about Bryson DeChambeau as head coach. We had kind of had it on the end of our podcast as a little funny segment, but the coach was serious. He was talking to these podcasters, golf podcasters, can't remember the name, and he was talking about how with Bryson, he was the worst behaved person he'd ever seen on the golf course. And he was at SMU, and he was trying to rebuild the team, but gave him the scholarship, right? He gave him the scholarship, and the reason he gave was because he can't coach somebody to shoot 79 to a 67, but he can coach somebody who shoots 67 to have a better attitude on the course and to become a better player, a more consistent player. Do you believe that is easier to coach somebody's mentality or to coach somebody playing the game of golf?
That's a really good question. I think it does depend on the guy, but I think from a competitive player's standpoint, and being the type of player that I was, kind of more on that laid back side, like I just touched on, I think what's in you is in you. And I don't think you can teach things like grit and how to grind it out. And when, the last thing a coach wants to see is anybody throwing the towel.
For sure.
Now that being said, there's certain things that just can't replace raw talent, So if you have a guy who's on your team, he's your number one or even your number two, but, he helps you be in contention for events. He helps you, he makes the guys around him better in terms of physical ability, can shoot those numbers, can hit it really far, can do all the physical things. I think there is an extent to where it's easier to kind of teach the mentality a little bit, because over time, that player will ultimately, get a handle on those things, because being fired up works and in moments, but there's no way that holds up for four straight rounds or for 4 straight months or a season. So I think it's important to realize when to pick your moments. If you're a hot-headed player, or if you get fired up, that's okay. That's a good thing. That means they care to an extent, right?
Yeah.
I think having a natural feel for golf, though, that's a hard thing to teach. I mean, you really can't teach somebody to shoot under par or, shoot par or better. I mean, that's one of those things you really got to find your formula of how you get to those numbers. So you can talk about it in theory in terms of greens and regulation, and you need to have this many putts or less around, and, there's a formula. Stats are one thing, but reality is, everybody can only be so physically talented, but the growth really happens in the mind, I think. So
absolutely. And if I'm a college coach, I've got to try and get somebody on the team who can shoot those low numbers, because not a lot of people can. It's kind of like chess, from a very young age, you kind of know who's going to become a chess grandmaster. You kind of know who's going to be there, because it's a very IQ-oriented game. You can see the patterns, you have the set pieces, you know exactly what it's going to do. And people are just really good at playing the game. And there's a lot of people that look at chess and that can coach chess but can't quite play on the level of a grandmaster. And they know all the theories and techniques and stuff, but they don't know how to do it. And so, it goes back to, it's the same thing with Tiger Woods. A lot of people don't realize that Tiger, everybody thinks he popped out of his mom's womb knowing how to swing a golf club, and that's just not the case. The dude probably has more practice hours than you and me combined. And we've practiced a lot over our life. And, I just think that, people don't realize that from a very early age, he was swinging that golf club. He was watching, his dad swing in the basement. He was watching golf on TV. He was swinging out on the course. From the very young age, he was always out there, always out there, always out there. And so, yeah, I mean, and I can't recruit people thinking that I can take 10 strokes off the game,
No, No, not at all. I get
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
for sure. And that's one thing I looked at when I was coaching was, the numbers are what they are, but how much room does this young player have to grow? Or some players are, they're already set with their mindset and they don't necessarily need help with that. But chances are, if you're a player who's shooting in the mid to low 70s, golf's a hard game, so you probably already have a good handle on how to kind of control and pace yourself mentally to an
Yeah,
extent,
sure.
because you don't just back into or back paddle into those mid to low 70s rounds or par or better. Chances are those players already have a pretty good grasp on some kind of mental approach,
Hmm.
and that's what I think is so cool about golf is it's as physical as it is mental, and it's as mental as it is physical. Now there's a side of golf too that it can't exist without a certain level of physical technique being in place. Um, but that's where a great mind comes in, and that can help take everybody who, like I was saying earlier, I think you can only be so physically talented, but how far can your mind take you? I think the physical talent will get you so far, but mental talent will get you the second half of that. The mental half will get you home. Mental is what gets you the wins. Mental is what gets you qualified, you know, in your college qualifiers and your Monday qualifiers, because all those guys can play. Whether it's college, whether it's pro, everybody can play. It's all upstairs, I think.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where kind of like Jordan Spieth's coach says, it's not really, you have those guys that are really good at one thing, right? Really, really good at one thing. You got Colin Morikawa, excellent ball striker. They're all good at putting, obviously at that level, but you have Rory McIlroy, great ball striker. Dustin Johnson, wedges. And then you have other players that are just lights out with the putter. But yeah, like for instance, with Cameron McCormick, one thing that Cameron McCormick says in his Earn Your Edge podcast is Jordan Spieth is just really, really good at knowing the game of golf, playing the game. And I just always wonder, what that's one way I always look at it, how important it is to get out there and play the game of golf as opposed to sitting there out on the range working on the swing. And how would you answer that question? How important to you is going out there and playing versus just sitting on the range all the time? Because I know a lot of my players have a problem with that. They go out there and they're just hitting ball after ball after ball after ball, and they never get out there and actually hit. Well, how important is that to you as a coach, getting them out there and playing golf?
Yeah, to me that's everything. I mean, the being on the range or being on the putting green is one thing, but those situations in practice don't really have a consequence. So, if you kind of miss one on the range, or you're not hitting it good on the range, you just grab another ball, or you walk away for a few minutes and you come back. But on the course, you have to find a way to have playable mistakes if you want to compete. And playing golf, there's definitely an art to it. There's good players over time, they kind of develop that kind of sixth sense of how they know where a good miss is. I'm not saying you're trying to miss all day, but they have a really good feel of where they can be if they're not hitting it good. And those are the kind of players that turn 74 into 72 or 71 and 70 into 67 or 68. Crafty ways, about how your mind works, and knowing how the game of golf kind of works. That's kind of the way of that's what separates the guys who win to the guys who are just good players. They have a way of turning in those, turning the situations into something positive. And I definitely think there's an art to it. There's an absolute um, everyone has their own way of doing it, but there's absolutely an art to kind of knowing how to miss and where to miss. And for me, I really got over that hump when I kind of realized, like, hey, I'm going to go out and I'm probably going to hit a couple shots a little sketchy. I might thin some. I might be a little bit off my lines today, but once I kind of quit trying to play perfect golf, my scores got a lot better because I started playing golf and I started thinking about, what side of the hole can I be on, or even if I knew I wasn't hitting it well, I could get by getting it down the left side and staying below the hole. So it's a way to make your C- game, competitive.
Yeah. I guess. So in college, you were like the most clutch player I think I've ever seen short game wise. I never got to go see you play in tournament pressure, but because I was a walk on and I didn't travel a lot, mainly because my game wasn't there. I didn't get to see you in the tournament pressure. However, I know my freshman year, whenever we were playing in those qualifying tournaments, if it came down to a putt or a chip, like if a chip you need to knock close or a putt you need to make it, I knew you were gonna make it. So. How do you think about shots like that? What do you think about whenever you have a shot? Is it different from other shots? Is it the same? Do you just try and think of it like it's any other shot? I just remember you had like a putt from off the green on 18. Like, you remember this. You had a putt on 18 to tie Mark Lestache, a senior on the team, to try and qualify for, I think it was the very first tournament of the year. Do you look at it as any other chip or any other putt, or is there something special you think about?
That's a good question. Basically, it kind of starts before that putter. It starts before there's a chance to tie or a chance to get in. I always really focused on playing the golf course, and if I could handle the golf course the best way I could, I knew the way my game was kind of designed, I'd always be kind of in the mix. Fortunately, I was never somebody who really shot anything. I never really shot myself out of it. There was days on that team we had to definitely shoot some numbers, but there was just times when I kind of knew that, hey, all I need to do is give myself a chance, and that would have been enough. And that's what I did. Now, when it comes to actually breaking it down and making that putt, I think I do treat those things a little differently, because you do have to make it. And all I tried to focus on was putting in a good routine, making sure I had a good read. And, those putts don't always go in. That's golf. There's fun, and it's not always a putt. Sometimes there's an iron shot you have to hit. And we all kind of know you're going to fail a lot more than you're going to succeed in this game, But I always try to make sure that no matter what I put in, I know that I put in my routine, and I know that I went into that situation with all the commitment I could ask of myself, and I just kind of had to realize the result is what it is. I kind of accepted, not knowing the result, and just really focused on everything that happened before that moment. And then at that moment, it's just about pulling the trigger and, you certainly hope it goes in, and that's why you practice and that's why you compete. You want to be in a position to where you can make something happen. But I think that the key for me was just putting myself in a position, and then if you're there enough,
just to bring it back
to those situations will start to go your way. They won't all. I wish they did. I think we all wish they did. But if you're there in times, you certainly kind of learn how to swallow the pressure a little bit, and how to negotiate your emotions when your heart really starts pounding and your hands kind of feel weird. And it's one of those things you have to be there a few times, and hopefully by the time you get there, you can draw them from some past experience.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And
I give you the answers. I'm sorry about that.
Nah, it's good. It's good. Don't worry about it. I know that for some people, they think about it some different way, or some people, they think about it like any other shot. That's why I was asking. They think about it like it's every other shot. So, and some of them are just as clutch, and I just wanted to get your kind of take on that. What made you make so many of that kind of stuff, Do you think it you play played a lot of really, really good players in college and high school. How much of an effect did all that talent that you played against? How did all that talent make you better, and how much would you attribute playing against that talent to your success in your career, in your golfing career?
I think for me personally, it had a lot to do with it because I had especially, everybody knows I grew up in the Ledbetter Academy system, and having a front row seat to not only great players my age, but I got to see a lot of professionals come in, and I got to see how they work through a lesson, and I got to see them work on their game up close, and they were very disciplined. They really didn't leave any open ends, and that really kind of encoded itself in my mind. And I was a sponge at that age. I was a teenager, and I just really soaked in what they were doing. And I always, when I meet really, younger players, younger teenage players these days, I say hang out with as good as players as you can, because that's only you're going to see what good golf looks like. You're going to see how they carry themselves. And naturally that just makes you a little more competitive. And I was really fortunate to have a great high school team. It's still to this day, I think, the most successful in the state in terms of state championship wins. And I don't take that for granted. I mean, that was a huge part of my formative years, and it really did change how I looked at golf as a whole. So, and since I played for two schools, and I got to see two very different systems and two different parts of the country. And I just think hanging out with good players is really contagious. I think that's why coaches want to get as much talent on their team as they can, because it's contagious, and it gets in your blood, and overall it just makes you a better player, without a doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. And so just to bring it to more of the golf world, so we've seen, and we were talking about Tiger earlier. We've seen Tiger now. Tiger's looking like he's back at his old self. Down at the Bahamas, he was swinging pretty good. He's coming back to the PNC Championship with his son Charlie, and he's going to be playing against the Thomases, who I feel like they win almost every year. So with this, with him recuperating and stuff, we had a poll out, and people can go look at that. We had a poll. What major do you think he comes back for? Do you think he comes back for Augusta, PGA, U.S. Open? What do you think? What do you think? Which major do you think he comes back for?
Knowing Tiger, I mean, I know the Masters is really high on his list. All the majors are, but Tiger loves Augusta, I think, just as much as anybody. That's been kind of one of his sweet spots in terms of major championship play, of course. Sure. And I think if we know anything about Tiger, he's aiming for Augusta, but also he's had a couple of years in the past now where he's had significant time off. The years he had his back surgery, a couple of the years he was away from the game, and usually I think if he doesn't play in Augusta, or if he doesn't play the PGA, towards the middle end of the summer there, I think that's kind of an indicator of what's to come. If he plays a pretty full schedule into the summer major sort of season, he's going to finish out the year, I think. This is obviously a unique situation. Augusta, knowing Augusta being hilly, and knowing Tiger's particular situation regarding his leg, I don't know how much I think he's trying as hard as he can to be back, and it's good to see him playing. I just think he really has to factor, can he make that walk 4 days? Is his leg in a good enough place where he can, go put in a full regimen to get ready for a major, and then go to the practice rounds, the pro-ams of the major, and then play the 4 competitive rounds. So if he feels like he's good to go at all those stages, I think Tiger will pull the trigger, because we know he's methodical on the course, and the way he sets up his schedule as well. And I think January, February will tell us a lot. I'm curious to see how many shots he hits this week at PNC. I know it's kind of a limited event, if you will. It's not 4 days. There's no cut. It's more of a fun team environment situation. But I think I'm curious to see how he physically holds up now and then in the coming months, and I think that'll start to really give us a good indicator. But Tiger kind of does this thing where and I kind of understand his approach. He doesn't really let anybody know until the 11th hour, and I think it's all to the point of if he's ready, if he's healthy, anything in that line. Tiger doesn't do anything unless it's pretty planned out and it's pretty methodical. So I think we'll see. I think our questions will be answered here in the coming month.
So just a few more things regarding golf. So with college golf, we talked about the tips to get in to college golf. Now, you played it, whenever you played college golf, you made like almost every tournament freshman year, right? And the only one that you didn't go to was conference, I think?
I played in conference.
Was conference?
I did play in conference. I made it onto the conference team. I think there was 12 events and I qualified for like 10. Something to that effect. Right. It could be spotty, but I vividly remember that year, and it was something.
It was
10 out of 12 events somewhere.
And what's so amazing about that is that you drive the ball, 250, 260 back then, specifically?
Yeah, I'm actually, back in those days, I didn't hit it much more than 250, 260. I'm longer now than I've ever been, ironically, but I think it's because I finally settled into my body. And
it happens as you grow up, you get bigger.
I was 135, 40 pounds soaking wet, and, not very far by.
Yeah. But, so all these players, they all think distance. And I always tell my players specifically, distance isn't everything. But if you want to get better, you have to, get closer in distance to give yourself a wedge. But what drove you to, you're a competitor. What do you think got you there as far as qualifying for those events? You're always a solid player, but what gave you that edge? Like what helped you get to that point where you were making all those events? You were always coach's steady guy. You always shot around par. And so, if you dig down into yourself trying to figure this out with me, what do you think it was?
Really, it kind of touching on what we talked about earlier. It was in my mind. So I really committed and buckled down to just playing my style of golf and not really caring at all if it was, physically impressive to see, if it was, what other people wanted me to do. Because my whole life I heard you need to hit it further, you need to do this, you need to get stronger, you need to gain weight, you need to eat. I heard it all, over and over. And I get it, people just wanted the best for me. But I really just buckled down and committed to playing my own style of golf and playing the golf course. And I knew I was good enough at that point to at least play my style of golf and shoot some decent numbers. Now, where that fell on the team, I knew if I went in that day and I didn't worry about really anybody else, didn't worry about, my own physical talent or anybody else's physical talent, golf kind of evens itself out once you get to the green, right? At the end of the day, 4 is 4 and par is par, or bogey's bogey, birdie's birdie. So I just really buckled down and committed to. You remember back in those days, I had a pretty significant little, 6-8 yard draw.
Oh, dude, it was
15 yards draw with the driver, and it was just every time it was Mr. Automatic. It's the same shot. I remember the first time playing with you, it was me, you, JD, and Chris, and you just kept hitting that same shot over and over and over again. it just hit the middle of the fairway every time. And, it wasn't a whole lot of distance, but it got out there.
My game at that time was, I guess you could kind of say it was one-dimensional. I mean, I really couldn't overpower a course. I couldn't really go chase the par 5s and 2, but I was methodical. Even though I'm very much a field player, I had a method, and if I couldn't get to the par 5, which was none of them, I would really try to get to a number I was comfortable with, whether that be 125 with a pitching wedge, or I just tried to get to where I could use my tools.
Yeah.
And my tools were based on being good with the wedges, or if I had to on the long par 4s, get good with the hybrids. And I would just try to put myself in that situation over and over and over again. And once I kind of understood that my process worked for me, and I really just clung to it. I stuck hard to it. And actually the guy that got me doing that it's my longtime coach. His name is Ron Grosjean.
I remember you telling me about him.
From
Yep.
the lead. Yeah, and he was the one who's like, look, man, like because I always kind of had this question in my mind, like, am I good enough to go play in college? Which it proved to be true, of course. But he's like, look, man, you're good enough. It has nothing to do. I mean, he pointed out, I remember this, he pointed to a guy on the range who had I went back to see him just to touch up on some swing stuff. And there was this guy who had insane ball speed. I mean, it was for an amateur, it was like in the high 160s. That's not unheard of at the professional level, but for an amateur, that's
good.
A lot. And he told me, he said, that guy has a lot of speed, but that guy's scoring average is in the 90s, and he wasn't picking on the guy. He was just saying he's got all this power, but he's not quite using it to help him shoot a number. So he just got it in my head. He's like, look, you just need to play your game. You have your style, you have your formula, and just go and do that. And that's good enough to compete. And if, he told me if I believed in that, it would be good enough. And it did turn out to be, I wasn't going to get it done with physical prowess. I wasn't going to get it, I wasn't going to beat anybody in the gym. I wasn't going to beat anybody in a long drive contest.
Yeah.
But, he got it into my head that buckle down, be a player, and figure out how to shoot some numbers, and that'll get you where you're looking to go, more than bombing it and, being concerned with, distance does not equate to score, and score does not equate to distance, is what I ultimately learned. Now, you definitely have to hit it, a kind of a minimum distance, and I was probably that example. You probably can't hit it, under 240 and realistically compete in any kind of high-level amateur or collegiate play or anything like that.
I agree.
You do have to have, some kind of physical bottom line.
Yeah.
But I lived right on that line, But again, I leaned more on my playing style and just my mental approach, really.
Yep. And I remember playing one with you, and one of my biggest problems was, especially my freshman year, I just got so consumed with distance. I just got so consumed with it. I think you remember this. I just got, I would always want to hit it so far. I didn't work on the mental game, didn't work on the short game as much, didn't go out there and hit as many putts. I was always in the gym trying to get the next level, and it wasn't even working on the body, right? It was just working on the core, just working on the speed aspect of it, and I didn't work on the whole body, and so that was one of the big things that I saw was a problem with me. And I remember one hole where, it didn't help me score wise, but I remember one hole where I thought, this is, I've got the distance, and that was on hole 4 out at Eaglebrook, right? Dogleg right, par 4. And I hit it, and I drove it past Kyle Martin. He's number 1 on the team, great player. and I drove it past him. He's also a bomber. He's no schmuck. He can nail the ball. And I just remember it, I outdrove him, and I thought to myself, and I still shot like 82 that day, I think. And I remember thinking to myself, this is not how I'm going to get my distance. This is not how I'm going to get the score. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, it was one of those things where it didn't help. So, it wasn't the answer. I can't hit it this far and make all these other mistakes and shoot low. So that led me to later in my career working more on short game, and that actually led me to making those tournaments, traveling to events. So, if I missed a putt, it was right next to it. It was a tap in. Whenever I had a long pitch, I was knocking it close. So that helped me a lot. That realization that distance isn't going to get us there. So yeah, and I didn't have the same kind of challenges you guys had playing the players you played, but that's no excuse. But you need to surround yourself, and this is what I tell my players: you need to surround yourself with players that are of that caliber, that do play that caliber, and that'll make you inevitably better as well. That'll help you grow as a golfer. So there's a reason why that all those golfers, they live in Sea Island, they live in Jupiter, and that, yeah.
Well, practicing and playing together, and it's not not all the time, but they do it. It does happen. I know for a fact it does. So I remember, to your point about your players who are probably like high school age, right? You can go, and that's the thing is, you could be on a high school team. You have 5 guys, and you could. There's high school golf is different at every single school, and so you could be the number 1 guy shooting 78, 79. In your mind, that's a good number, right? And that is, if you're breaking 80, you're playing some decent golf. You can probably clean some things up, but you still did a lot of things right. So that doesn't mean you're a bad player. But when you get in these competitive scenarios, you start to realize that those numbers don't really get you far. And I don't mean that in a negative way. You just kind of got to find ways to clean those rounds up. And I, fortunately, growing up, saw a lot of good players play some really, really sound, solid golf. And I kind of just got to really see from A to B how they actually did it. And some of them did it via physical talent. Some of them did it being insane with their wedge play. The more of those things you can do as a collective, if you can be, like you were saying, I think you were saying was it Rory or Ricky? I think you said Ricky. Anyway, Jordan Spieth, sorry. I don't. One piece of his game is flawless, but he does a lot of things really good. He had a couple of years there he wasn't driving it well, but he's a really good iron player. He's really good around the greens. When he's putting, I know he had that bad stretch of putting, but when he's putting good.
Oh yeah, when he's putting, he's on.
I think it's important to just get it's easier said than done, of course, but the more you can kind of be all around pretty solid is better than doing one thing phenomenally. Like, you can pound it, yeah, but can you put it in the hole? Or, you can lay up to a wedge distance, but if you can't stuff it in there, there's, it doesn't pay off much.
Sure.
All these things sound good talking about it, but doing them is very hard. So I don't want to make it. I'm not negating it. We all know it's difficult. It's insanely difficult.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So, especially if I'm playing and practicing all the time. But hanging out with good players makes you develop all areas of your game. If you want to kind of hang in there and compete with those guys, you got to be sharp everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And the one thing that I tell all my players is, have some stakes on it. It doesn't have to be money. Doesn't have to be anything like that, but anything that's going to give you that encouragement to go out there and shoot better, that incentive, it's going to get it. It's going to help you. It's going to help you get there. And I think that kind of stuff, it doesn't, I just think that helps a lot, helps players improve their ability to play under pressure. You know what I mean?
Like Chipotle, we did a 2v2 match on our college team. We played for Chipotle, played for, who had the ride in the back seat or whatever, but playing for something, man.
Absolutely. Whoever loses has to paint their nails.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, of course. Anything to make it competitive is great. I mean, I think I love, those were some of my favorite times, was going out, getting to practice and knowing we had a match that day. That got me going. That was the fun.
So, anyway, I just want to kind of wrap it up here. We've talked for about 50 minutes now. That's a lot. So, time flies when you're having fun. Am I right? Yeah.
Well, when we go back like we do, and we have so much shared experience, it's easy, man. You and I have always been really easy. It's always fun talking. Always easy talking with you. So
it doesn't surprise me either. I remember sitting in Chipotle. We'd stay there for like an hour, easy, hour and a half. Yeah, we'd finish our food and just stay there and talk. Yeah, we'd go over to like SEU, go back to the dorm, stuff like that. Yeah. Last question I have for you, Will, before you have to go is, so say the player is, in college, and say they're qualifying. Do you have any kind of advice for those players that want to get to the next level? Because I know that you've known people that have gotten there, and you notice this probably as a coach. What is the thing that sets those people? What is the thing that sets those people that make it, like the Lydia Coes? Because I know you knew her like kind of more tertiary, but. What sets those players apart from your average college player?
Yeah, I knew her back then. I saw her often. She was super friendly. She was there. She was there for a reason. She was on a mission. So we didn't hang out much, but we had putting and chipping contests, and I had lunch with her a couple times. So yeah.
So what would you say? Yeah, what would you say to someone like that wants to get to the next level? What kind of mentality, what kind of attitude does it take? What do you notice from those people? What kind of attitude do they have?
Yeah, that's a really, I think that answer's got a lot of facets.
No, it's not an easy question.
Yeah, the guys that I've noticed that have gone on, you really got to have kind of that. I don't like using the word killer mindset, but you got to have kind of that doggish mentality where you got to be really physically sharp. You got to be really mentally on top of it. Because once you going from high school to college is one thing. Going from college to pro, you're playing with guys who are, that's how they eat. That's how they pay their mortgage. So it's not a hobby for them at that point. Yes, they love the game, but it's serious business, and obviously I think they want it more than anybody, but for them, I think at that specific moment, when they say, okay, yes, I'm going to turn pro, I don't really think there's really, very rarely is there another option. I don't think at that moment they really have any other aspirations or want to do anything else. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Some people, they could be getting married, or they could be having a baby. They could be, they could have some career options on the table. But I think they get themselves to a certain physical capability. I think you have to know you can do it. I think you have to know, you have to have, some success, meaning, yes, you've won golf tournaments. Yes, you can shoot par or better pretty much every time you tee it up. And then I think those guys just have a whole nother mindset that even good players who don't turn professional, I think they possess another mental gear that some of us don't have. I never turned professional. I didn't think I could shoot low enough numbers all the time. I think the lowest I ever shot in competitive play was 3 under, and I did everything right. And you go to a Monday qualifier, and you have to shoot 8 under par to even sniff
Yeah,
it, And I think those are yes, they're physically talented, but I think they've got another mental gear they can put themselves into. And it takes golf is a individual sport, as I always say, but I think in today's game there's always a team that goes behind you. You definitely need the financial support. You definitely need somebody in your corner who's keeping an eye on your golf swing, and somebody who can help manage your career affairs. If you somebody who can help manage your expenses. Because golf's hard enough to be good enough. It's hard enough to be that good just playing golf, and then balancing else that life throws at you. But yeah, the thing I've noticed, it's just another mental gear. And there's guys, you hear the stories, like I think when Justin Rose turned pro, I think he like 20 or 25 cuts in a row. And that doesn't mean he wasn't a good player. He just didn't have his feet under him yet at the professional level, But I think you have to have some proven success already, saying, yep, okay, I have no problem. I'm not afraid of shooting low numbers. I'm not afraid of competitive play whatsoever. There's a lot of things that I think got to be in your corner to say, okay, yes, I'm going to be a professional at this,
Mm-hmm.
And there's guys who are really great amateurs who couldn't be professionals. If there's no reason, there's guys who, the USGA events, if you win, winning a US amateur is, you're playing just as good as a professional player. To go out and get in that field is one thing, compete in that field is another, and win against that field, you're already in a whole nother realm of play.
Absolutely.
Right? And those guys are just as good as physically as, and they're mentally great too. But as like today's game, it's harder and harder because there's great players on every corner of the globe. Behind every tree, behind every high school, every golf course, in every corner of the world, there are great players coming up, and there's just more and more coming, But it's kind of a funny thing you asked that. I don't know if I've noticed any one thing, I guess, in those guys and those girls who have gone on to play professional golf. But yes, they stuck with it, but they definitely have a certain level of physical talent and a certain level of mental capacity. I know that's pretty generic, but it's far above what the rest of us do. Because when I have friends who've now made it, even like to Corn Ferry, Latino America, Symetra Tour, and it's just a different breed. That's all I can really say. They're just a little bit more physically talented. They can hit more shots, and mentally they're obviously already there if you're at that level. So
yeah, just for me, I actually got the chance to play at a pre-qualifier for the RSM Classic, and it was hosted by the Georgia PGA. And one thing I noticed is I got to play with two guys, a guy from Duke and a guy from Clemson. The guy from Clemson was Will Nottingham, I think his last name was. And he was amazing. He was 4 under. He was 4 under through 4 holes. Yeah. So, and he kind of stalled out there middle of the round, but 4 under through 4 holes, that's getting it done. And it's not on an easy golf course either. So one thing that I noticed is that as good as he is, he didn't even make it. He didn't make it past that Monday. So there seems to be that extra barrier, right? There's that extra level. So there's hard, which is what I played in that pre-qualifier, and then you have that bigger one, right? And that shows that there's gradations of pressure, right? Major championships aren't like normal tournaments. Normal tournaments in the PGA have more pressure than Korn Ferry events, so on and so forth. So, you know, yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with exposure, you know, exposing yourself to that pressure, exposing yourself to that level of play constantly, putting that pressure on you constantly. So the better you do that, the more you do that, the better you're going to be in those pressure situations whenever those opportunities present themselves. So
I kind of brought that up when we were talking about those qualifiers at Southeastern. I'd been there enough to where I kind of already knew, I kind of had a really good feel of what pressure felt like and how I handled. Now, I can't say Southeastern or any college qualifier compares to Monday qualifying. That's a whole nother level. But you know what like you just said, you have to be there to know what to do. I mean, it's like, it doesn't matter if, you know, how good you are. If you haven't been in that set of circumstances, and there's no way to know how to respond unless you've done it a couple times. There's just not.
I 100% agree with that. I 100% agree with that.
Sure.
Yeah. So
it's tough. I mean, professional golf, I think people think they understand it, but I don't know that they do. And I'm not saying I do, but it's one of those things where you really have to just be in an entire another gear. You know, it doesn't mean there's not other good players out there, but it's a whole, like you said, it's a whole nother layer of pressure. You know, there's dollars and cents involved. There's livelihoods at stake. You know, it's, if you and I go play right now, we both shoot 78, we can go to Chipotle and have a good time, and, you know, we're still okay with our lives for the most part, you know. Those guys, man, if they go out and they shoot 78, I mean, there's a lot of, I would imagine there's a lot of questioning and thinking and analyzing that goes on, because they want to know why and how that happened, and how do they correct it so that it's not, you know, a long-term thing. And I don't know, it's just a whole nother thing, you know. It's you got to be cut out for it. And I realize now I don't think I would be cut out for that at all, to be honest with you. I don't either. I mean, I think trying to go that route, I don't think I would have loved or appreciated golf as much. So who knows, you know, that's why, you know, there's like 0.5% of people that do it and are successful.
100%. And you know, thank you so much, Will, for, you know, coming here and letting us have you here on the program, Chunk and Run. And, you know, I just want to give you an opportunity to kind of plug your band, OakLee, and for anybody listening, it's OAKLEE.
Yeah, so if for anybody listening where you're at, we're based out of Central Florida. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook, OakLee Music. We're on Apple Music and Spotify, the same name. We have a website, oakleeband.com.
Great band.
When I'm not doing that, I'm doing my club fitting. So that's where you'll find me. Pretty much, I'm either playing a show, I'm playing golf, or I'm fitting clubs, you know. And it's not all that bad. I could probably, you know, make more money doing something else maybe, but I'm totally content doing two things that I dig all the time.
Love it.
So
absolutely.
That's all I really want to say. It's funny you bring that up. I get all, you know, I'm sure you've heard this too, but society always kind of tells you to get like a real job and, you know, make real money. And I'm totally cool with, you know, I'm really glad I get to go and get people into golf clubs, and I get to see, you know, people get help from club fitting, and my time coaching, I got to see people get better, and I got to see their lives play out on and off the course. So just be happy doing what you're doing, really. You know, it doesn't really matter if it's coaching, if it's teaching, if it's knitting, if you're a runner, just do it. You know, it's just, life gets so about the dollars and cents, and I hate that. You know, yes, money matters, of course, always has, always will, but not to top or to trump how content you are with what you do.
Absolutely. Totally agree. and preach to the choir. So, yeah. Anyway, anybody always tells me, it'd be amazing if I played golf every day, and you just have to tell them, man, I don't play golf every day. Anybody that does, unless you're a professional golfer. So I'm usually here till 9:30, usually working on something, whether it's social media or something else, always working on something late. So anyway, yeah, I'm sure it happens as a musician, working on a riff, working on a song, stuff like that.
A really good example is like the live shows. I mean, people see the 2 hours that we play, but nobody outside of people who are in the band or playing music on their own, is you don't really realize that you're there before everybody, you're there after everybody leaves. You get all your equipment loaded in, you get everything dialed in at sound check, and that's just stuff people don't see. And I'm sure it's very similar to what you do with your coaching. I mean, there's endless computer work and paperwork and phone calls, and we're always on our phones. I'm doing it with music, emailing, calling, trying to get stuff set up. You're probably doing the same thing. We're always, regardless of your field, you're trying to connect, you're trying to establish connections, establish relationships. And I think we only get to really do what we love for maybe 30 or 40% of what we actually put into it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you.
It's the same coaching college golf. Before I coached college golf, I thought, hey, I'm just going to go to the golf course and, run a qualifier and, help people with yardages, and that's going to be hunky-dory. It's going to be all good. But
absolutely,
that's like 10% of it. There's the entire time spent recruiting and emailing and attending the athletic staff meetings, managing your budget, managing everything that involves the athletic department, compliance, stuff people don't think about, and stuff I didn't think about till I actually had to do it. So, are your players eligible? Are they going to class? And if they're not, it's just stuff you don't realize until you're doing it. Stuff you have to keep track of as a coach, because if you don't, your athletic director's not going on you.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the program, and and you're kind of our guinea pig for a live show. I fixed some of the audio, but we obviously are going to have a lot of bugs, and so I hope a lot of people have something that they can glean from what you said. And now that I've edited it hopefully it ends up being pretty good and people like it. So
well, hey man, thanks for having me on. This has been really cool. I've had a good time. It's always good.
100%. Great talking to you, buddy. And I wish you a long, successful career in whatever you do, music, golf.
I appreciate it, man, and right back at you. I know, like we were talking about the other day, I know you're going to crack top instructor in the country in no time, if I know you the way I do. So
fingers crossed, right? Thank you so much, Will, and I'll see you later. And hope you have a great night. Merry Christmas.
Yes, sir. Peace out.
See you,
Take care, man.